There was a man who buried his children, who was betrayed by his closest friends, who held more power than almost anyone alive, and slept on the floor. And yet of every person in his empire he was, by his own account, the calmest. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and tonight you're going to learn the same 7 secrets. He used to find peace in chaos that would have shattered most men, because the world hasn't gotten any less chaotic since his time. It's just louder now. Welcome back to Wisdom of the Stoics, the channel where ancient philosophy meets modern struggle. If you're new here, we don't do empty motivation. We do timeless thinking, the kind that has survived 2,000 years, because it actually works. If that sounds like something you need right now, hit subscribe before we begin, because by the end of this video, you're going to want to come back to this philosophy again and again. Let's begin.
Picture this. You're stuck in traffic. You're already late. Your hands grip the wheel, your jaw tightens. And a single thought loops in your head: this shouldn't be happening to me. Now picture a different person, in the exact same traffic, at the exact same time. Same delay. Same lost minutes. But their jaw isn't clenched. Their breathing is steady. Why? It's not because they have a better car, or a less important meeting, or more patience by nature. It's because somewhere along the way, they learned the first and most important secret of a peaceful soul. What the Stoic philosopher Epictetus called the dichotomy of control. Epictetus didn't have an easy life to philosophize from. He was born into slavery. His leg was permanently crippled, some accounts say by a master's cruelty. He owned almost nothing. And yet his teachings would go on to influence emperors. How does a man with nothing teach the most powerful people in Rome how to find peace? Because Epictetus understood something most of us never stop to examine. There are only 2 categories of things in this world. Things within your control, your thoughts, your judgments, your responses, your effort. And things outside your control, other people's opinions. The weather, the traffic. The outcome of events you've already done your best on. Almost all of our suffering, Epictetus argued, comes from confusing these 2 categories. We treat things outside our control as if they were inside it. And then we suffer when reality refuses to obey us. Think about the last time you lost your peace. Was it really the event itself? Or was it your resistance to the event? Your insistence that it should have gone differently? This is the cliff edge in our opening shot. The man standing there isn't suicidal, he's a war veteran. He returned from combat with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. A therapist had once asked him, "What can you control about what happened to you over there?" He'd said, "Nothing." "And what can you control now?" Slowly, the answer became, "How I breathe right now. Where I put my attention right now. What I do with this next hour." That single shift in framing, from what happened to me to what is within my power now, is the foundation. Every other secret in this video is built on. Without it, none of the rest will work. With it, almost anything becomes survivable. Marcus Aurelius wrote this idea into his private journal, never intending it for an audience. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He wrote it to himself, as a reminder, on a freezing military campaign, surrounded by death and the constant threat of betrayal. If he needed the reminder, so do we. So here's your first practice. The next time you feel your peace slipping, ask yourself one question: is this mine to control? If yes, act. If no, release your grip, and direct that same energy toward what is yours.
It sounds simple. It is simple. It is also one of the hardest disciplines a human being can practice, because our instinct is to fight reality rather than accept it and then act wisely within it. If this idea is landing for you right now, drop a comment with the word control. I want to see how many of you are starting to see your own traffic jams, arguments, and bad days differently already. Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable. What if the worst thing that ever happened to you was actually necessary? Not good, not deserved, not something to be grateful for in some shallow, forced positivity way, but necessary, a piece of the puzzle that removed would unmake the person you've become. This is the second secret, and it goes a layer deeper than simply accepting what you can't control. The Stoics called it amor fati, the love of fate, not mere tolerance, not gritted teeth endurance, love. It sounds almost insane on its face. Love a divorce? Love a diagnosis? Love the death of someone irreplaceable? No reasonable person volunteers for those things. But amor fati was never about wanting bad things to happen. It's about your relationship to the things that already have happened and will happen, because some things simply do, regardless of our preferences. Consider Seneca, exiled from Rome, his properties seized, his reputation under attack by political enemies who wanted him erased from history. He could have spent his exile in bitterness, replaying every betrayal. Instead, his letters from that period are some of the calmest, most generous writing of his life. Not because exile didn't hurt, it clearly did, but because he refused to let the hurt curdle into permanent resentment against reality itself. There's a particular kind of suffering that comes not from the event, but from our refusal to stop relitigating it. You know this feeling, the argument that happened 6 years ago that you still rehearse in the shower, the decision you made at 23 that you still beat yourself up over at 40, the diagnosis you keep asking why me about, as if an answer would change the treatment plan. Amor fati asks something radical of you. What if you stopped asking why and started asking what now? Here's a story that captures this. A woman lost her business during an economic collapse that had nothing to do with her competence, market forces, a pandemic, timing entirely beyond her control. She spent 18 months in deep grief over it. Then one day, she said something that sounded almost like a betrayal of her own pain. I think I needed to lose that business to build the one I actually wanted. Was she lying to herself? Or had she simply stopped fighting a battle that was already over and turned her full attention toward the battle she could still win? This is not about being a doormat to misfortune. It is not about telling someone who has experienced real tragedy that everything happens for a reason in some cosmic, justifying sense. The Stoics were not naive about suffering. Seneca buried friends, watched Rome burn, was eventually forced to take his own life on the order of an emperor he had once tutored. They knew suffering intimately. Amor fati is not denial of pain. It is the refusal to add a second layer of suffering, the suffering of resentment on top of the first. Marcus Aurelius captured the mechanics of this beautifully when he wrote that the things which happen to us are neutral until our judgment makes them otherwise. The event is the event. The story you tell about the event is yours to write. So here's your practice for this secret. Take the heaviest thing you're currently carrying, the thing you keep asking, why did this happen to me about? And just for the length of this video, try asking a different question instead. Given that this happened, what is the most useful thing I can build from here? You don't have to love it yet, but you can stop fighting it. If you've ever turned your worst moment into your greatest strength, I want to hear that story in the comments below. These are the stories that remind the rest of us it's possible. Now we arrive at the secret that sounds the darkest, but is actually the most liberating of them all. Memento mori, remember you must die. Roman generals, after their greatest triumphs, would have a slave whisper this phrase into their ear as they paraded through cheering crowds, a reminder that even at the peak of glory, mortality was waiting, patient and unimpressed by medals. Why would anyone want that whispered into their ear during their greatest moment of pride? Because the Stoics understood something we spend most of our lives avoiding. An undefined lifespan creates infinite procrastination, but a finite one creates urgency and gratitude in equal measure. Think about how you'd spend today differently if you knew, with certainty, it was your last. Not in a panicked bucket list way, but in a quieter way. Would you snap at the driver who cut you off? Would you spend 3 hours scrolling a screen, half present with the people in the room with you? Would you let a grudge against your brother continue one more day? Most of us live as though we have unlimited time, and so we spend our most valuable resource, attention, carelessly, on things that don't deserve it. Memento mori isn't about being morbid. It's about being honest. It's a tool for resorting your priorities by what actually matters, instead of what's merely urgent or loud. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire, surrounded by flattery and ceremony, wrote to himself constantly about death, not out of despair, but as a discipline. He understood that death is the great equalizer that strips away the noise. Emperor or slave, the same fate awaits. Once you internalize this fully, status games lose some of their grip on you. Other people's opinions of you matter less. The argument you're having about something petty matters less. What matters more is whether you're living according to your own values. Today, in the time you actually have, here's where this becomes deeply personal. Many of you watching this have lost someone, a parent, a friend, maybe a child. There is no harder loss than that one. And in the wreckage of that loss, something strange sometimes happens. A clarity arrives that nothing else in life seems to produce. Suddenly, the things you used to argue about seem absurd. Suddenly, you call the people you love just to say it. Suddenly, the urgent emails that used to consume your day shrink down to their actual size, small. The tragedy is that this clarity usually arrives only through loss. The Stoic practice of memento mori is an attempt to access that same clarity without needing to wait for tragedy to force it on you. Try this tonight. Before you fall asleep, ask yourself honestly, if I knew this was one of my last 100 days, would I have spent today the way I just spent it? You don't need a dramatic answer. You just need an honest one. And tomorrow, let that honesty adjust one small thing. A phone call you've been putting off, an apology you owe, a moment of presence you've been rationing. This is not about fear. The Stoics were remarkably unafraid of death precisely because they thought about it so often. It lost its power to ambush them. The fear lives in avoidance. The peace lives in acceptance. If this section is hitting you in a personal place right now, that's all right. Let it. And if you're finding value in this video, this is a good moment to hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this exact message today. There's a particular kind of strength that has nothing to do with muscle and nothing to do with money, status, or other people's approval. The Stoics called it the inner citadel. Picture a fortress, stone walls high and thick, built on a hill that no army has ever successfully taken. Inside that fortress, regardless of what's happening outside the walls, siege, storm, betrayal, scarcity, there is a room that remains untouched, calm, sovereign, yours. This is a metaphor for your mind, specifically your capacity for judgment. The one thing the Stoics insisted could never be taken from you by force, no matter how powerful your enemy. Epictetus, the former slave, embodied this more literally than perhaps anyone in history. His body was owned by another man. His leg was broken. He had almost no material possessions, no political power, no physical freedom. And yet he taught, with total conviction, that he was free, because the only thing that mattered, his own judgments and responses, could not be touched by any master. This sounds at first like a philosophy of giving up, a way of making peace with powerlessness instead of fighting for actual freedom and justice. But that misunderstands the teaching entirely. The inner citadel isn't a replacement for fighting injustice where you can. It's the foundation that allows you to fight without being destroyed by the fight. A person without an inner citadel who enters a battle for justice often burns out, becomes consumed by rage, or crumbles when the battle is lost. A person with an inner citadel can fight the same battle, lose the same battle, and still walk away with their peace intact, ready to fight again tomorrow. Think of the people in your own life who seem unshakable, not because nothing bad happens to them, but because when bad things do happen, something in them doesn't break. That something is the inner citadel, and the encouraging truth is, it isn't something you're born with or without. It's built, conversation by conversation, decision by decision, the same way a fortress is built stone by stone. Every time you choose your response instead of reacting on impulse, you add a stone. Every time you refuse, to let someone else's insult dictate your mood for the rest of the day. You add a stone. Every time you stay calm in an argument that would have once consumed you for hours, you add a stone. And every time you let someone else's opinion control your self-worth, every time you collapse the moment something doesn't go your way, every time you let a stranger's comment online ruin your entire evening, you're not adding stones. You're letting the walls crumble before they're even finished. Marcus Aurelius wrote about retreating into himself as a way to find peace amid the chaos of running an empire. He didn't have the luxury of escaping his responsibilities. He simply learned to carry an internal sanctuary with him wherever he went, so that the chaos outside never had to become chaos inside. This is available to you, regardless of your circumstances right now, regardless of what's happening at your job, in your relationship, in your finances. The walls of your inner citadel are built entirely from your own responses, and that means construction can begin today, in this exact moment, with whatever is currently testing you. Here's something almost no one does, because it seems backwards on the surface: deliberately imagining losing what you love, in order to love it more fully right now. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. And before you assume this is a recipe for anxiety, understand that it produces the opposite effect when practiced correctly. Most anxiety comes from vague, unexamined fear, a low hum of something bad might happen that we never actually look at directly. Negative visualization does the opposite. It looks directly at the worst case, examines it fully, and in doing so, drains it of its power to ambush you. Here's how it works in practice. Tonight, before you go to sleep, spend 2 minutes imagining your life without something you currently take for granted. Your health, your home, a relationship you've stopped noticing because it's simply always been there. Don't dwell in despair, just sit with the reality that everything you have is temporary, borrowed, and not guaranteed. Then here's the part that changes everything. Open your eyes and notice that the thing you just imagined losing is, in this moment, still here. Your spouse is still in the next room. Your health, however imperfect, is still functioning. Your home still stands. This single exercise, practiced regularly, does something remarkable to gratitude. It moves gratitude from a passive feeling you wait to arrive into an active practice you generate on command, by deliberately contrasting what you have against its absence. Seneca used this practice extensively, particularly regarding the people he loved. He understood with total clarity that every relationship ends through distance, through disagreement, or eventually through death. Rather than finding this thought morbid, he found it clarifying. It meant every conversation with someone he loved carried a weight it wouldn't have carried if he assumed infinite time together. Think about how differently you'd treat someone if you knew, with certainty, this was the last conversation you'd have with them for a long while. You'd probably listen more closely. You'd let the small irritations slide. You'd say the thing you'd normally swallow out of awkwardness. Negative visualization isn't pessimism. It's a corrective lens for a very specific and very human flaw. We adapt to good things so quickly that we stop seeing them at all. The health we have becomes invisible the moment it stops being new. The person sleeping beside us every night becomes background noise rather than a miracle we somehow get to keep experiencing. This practice puts that miracle back in focus, not by acquiring something new, but by remembering briefly and deliberately what it would be like to lose what you already hold. Try it tonight, just once, with one thing. Notice what shifts. There's a thought experiment Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again in the quiet pages of his private journal. It wasn't a complicated philosophical argument or an abstract theory. It was a simple exercise of imagination, yet one powerful enough to dissolve anger, shrink anxiety, and restore perspective in moments when life felt unbearably heavy. He called it the view from above. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine it as vividly as you can. Picture yourself standing exactly where you are now. Then slowly begin to rise. You lift above your room, above your home, above your neighborhood. The streets that once seemed so busy now resemble thin lines drawn across the earth. The buildings that occupied so much of your attention become tiny shapes. The people rushing through their days become invisible. Keep rising. Higher still. Your city begins to shrink until it fits comfortably within your field of vision. Roads become threads. Rivers become ribbons. Everything that once felt enormous suddenly appears remarkably small. Don't stop. Rise above your country. Watch borders disappear. From this height, no invisible line separates one nation from another. Mountains remain, oceans remain, forests remain. But the divisions that consume so much of human attention vanish completely. Higher, the curve of the earth slowly reveals itself. Clouds drift peacefully over continents without caring about politics, status, arguments, or opinions. The entire planet now floats beneath you, a fragile blue sphere wrapped in a thin atmosphere, quietly suspended in an ocean of darkness. And still, keep rising. The earth becomes smaller. The moon passes by. The sun becomes another distant star. Entire solar systems begin to emerge. Galaxies stretch across unimaginable distances. Billions upon billions of stars fill the silence of space. Eventually, our entire world becomes nothing more than a tiny blue dot, almost impossible to distinguish, among countless other points of light scattered across an incomprehensible universe. Now, from that impossible height, look back at whatever has been stealing your peace today. The argument that replayed endlessly in your mind. The email you can't stop thinking about. The deadline that feels overwhelming. The rude comment beneath your post. The awkward conversation. The traffic jam. The mistake you made yesterday. The opinion of someone you barely know. Look at it again. Does it still occupy the same amount of space inside your mind? Or has something quietly changed? This exercise isn't meant to convince you that your life is meaningless. It isn't asking you to become emotionally numb. It isn't a lesson in hopelessness. Quite the opposite. It is a lesson in proportion, because our minds have a remarkable habit of enlarging whatever sits directly in front of us. When you hold a coin close enough to your eye, it can block out an entire mountain. Not because the coin is larger, but because of perspective. Our worries work exactly the same way. Viewed from only an inch away, they appear enormous. Viewed within the full scale of existence, they become what they truly are. Real, certainly, but rarely as absolute as fear insists they are. Marcus Aurelius practiced this perspective constantly. Imagine the weight he carried. He ruled an empire threatened by war on multiple fronts. Disease swept through cities. Political rivals waited for him to fail. Trusted advisors betrayed him. Family members disappointed him. Every decision affected millions of lives. From inside the imperial palace, each betrayal could have felt like the center of the universe. Each insult could have justified endless resentment. Each political conflict could have consumed every waking thought. Yet Marcus repeatedly stepped back. Not physically, mentally. He rose above the throne room, above Rome, above the empire itself. And from that wider perspective, even the greatest political conflicts appeared temporary. The Roman Empire, which seemed eternal to those living inside. It would eventually become history. Its monuments would crumble. Its emperors would become names inside books. Its victories and defeats would fade into silence. And beyond even that, the earth itself would continue spinning through space, utterly indifferent to human pride. That realization didn't make Marcus careless. It made him calm, because once you truly understand how temporary everything is, you become far more careful about what deserves your emotional energy. There is a particular kind of relief hidden inside this perspective that almost nothing else can offer. Not because your problems disappear, but because most of what steals your peace was never worthy of occupying so much space inside your mind. The harsh words from someone you'll never meet again. The co-worker who misunderstood your intentions. The stranger who judged you without knowing your story. The inconvenience that delayed your plans. The embarrassment that keeps replaying inside your memory long after everyone else has forgotten it. How much of your life has been surrendered to moments that lasted only minutes? How many peaceful evenings have been sacrificed to conversations that other people stopped thinking about before the day was over. The Stoics would gently remind you that attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Where your attention goes, your life quietly follows. That is why wisdom is not learning that nothing matters. Wisdom is learning what actually deserves to matter. There are things worthy of your concern: your character, your integrity, your family, your health, your purpose, your daily actions, the promises you make, the way you treat another human being. These deserve your full attention. But the endless stream of small irritations, the imagined judgments, the bruises to your ego, the passing inconveniences dressed up as emergencies, most of them are simply noise wearing the costume of importance. And the more often you practice seeing them from above, the less power they quietly hold over your days. So the next time something smaller than a true crisis begins stealing your peace, pause, close your eyes, rise above the room, above the city, above the country, above the earth itself. Watch your problem shrink back to its true size, then slowly return. Come back into your ordinary life, answer the same email, continue the same conversation, face the same challenge. But notice something remarkable. The problem may not have changed at all, yet the person carrying it has. And sometimes that change in perspective is enough to transform not only your day, but the way you choose to live your entire life. We've saved the deepest secret for last, because it's the one that holds all the others together. The Stoics believed that the only true good was virtue itself, not outcomes, not wealth, not reputation, not even health, but the quality of your own character and choices, regardless of what the world does in response. This sounds almost impractical in a world obsessed with results. We're taught to chase outcomes, the promotion, the relationship, the recognition. The Stoics taught something almost opposite. Do the right thing because it is right. Release your grip on the outcome entirely, and find your peace in the doing rather than the result. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and could have chased glory, conquest, and a legacy carved in marble. Instead, his private journal, written for no audience, published only after his death, reveals a man obsessed not with his legacy, but with whether he had acted with justice, patience, and wisdom on that particular day. He judged himself not by results he couldn't fully control, but by effort and character, which were entirely his. This is liberating in a way that's hard to overstate. If your peace depends on the promotion coming through, the relationship working out, the business succeeding, you've outsourced your peace to forces outside your control, and you will spend your life at the mercy of outcomes that were never guaranteed to anyone. But if your peace depends on whether you acted with integrity today, whether you were honest, whether you showed up with effort, whether you treated people with the respect the Stoics called justice, then your peace becomes something nobody can take from you, because it was never tied to anything external in the first place. This is the secret that makes every other secret sustainable. The dichotomy of control tells you what to focus on. Amor fati tells you how to relate to what happens. Memento mori tells you why urgency matters. The inner citadel tells you where your strength actually lives. Negative visualization restores your gratitude. The view from above restores your perspective. And virtue, as its own reward, tells you, finally, what to actually aim for with all of that clarity. Not outcomes, but character. We began this video on a cliff edge, with a man whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. Let's return to him. That man learned slowly, painfully, one Stoic principle at a time, that peace was never going to arrive from outside circumstances finally lining up. It was something he had to build, stone by stone, inside himself, regardless of what the world kept throwing at him. That's the secret. Not a single secret, really, but 7 doors into the same room. A room that has always been available to you, in every circumstance, including this exact one, right now, watching this video. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his private journal because he had already mastered peace. He wrote it because he was still practicing every single day until the day he died. That's the honest truth about this philosophy, and it isn't a destination you arrive. at once and keep forever. It's a practice you return to again and again, especially on the days it feels hardest. If even one of these 7 secrets gave you something to hold on to today, that's enough. Pick the one that spoke loudest to you and practice just that one this week. Tell me in the comments which of the 7 hit you hardest. I read every single one, and it genuinely shapes what we cover next on this channel. And if you want more of this kind of thinking in your life consistently, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the world isn't getting quieter, and the work of building your own inner citadel never really finishes. Until next time, memento mori, amor fati, and walk gently with yourself.